13 years of devastating civil war, 24 years of Bashar al-Assad, about 29 for his father Hafiz, all in all, 53-year-long rule that was ended in a swift move by the Islamist fighters, and over 5 decades of iron-fisted rule of the Assad family came to an end. Now, Islamist fighters, they have seized the capital, Damascus, and President Bashar al-Assad has reportedly fled to Russia, where it seems to be he's the Putin man. He has been granted political asylum. Streets in Damascus, meanwhile, are cautiously coming back to life, though shops remain shuttered and the fighters now roam freely in the whereabouts of the city. Ahmed al-Shara, the leader of the rebel alliance, is meeting with former Assad officials to pave the way for a transitional government. A glimmer of hope emerges from Syrians as plans are underway to reopen banks, restore services, and begin the daunting task of rebuilding a shattered nation. But this is not just about Syria. It's a game changer for the region. Bashar al-Assad's fall has dealt a massive blow to Iran and Russia, who lose a key ally in the West Asian region. Meanwhile, countries like Turkey and Israel are seizing this moment to the best of their ability to bolster their influence in Syria. Israel continues to strike strategic sites across Syria, determined to neutralize heavy weapons that were left behind, whilst the United States has ramped up operations against a possible ISIS resurgence. Earlier, the United States' Central Command had put out exactly the targets that it had hit, and Israeli forces and the Israeli Defense Forces have also made about 12-kilometer inroads on the other side of the buffer zone near the Golan Heights. And then there's the human story, because families reuniting as political prisoners are being freed, refugees finally daring to dream of returning back home, and ordinary Syrians hoping to rebuild their lives after more than a decade of heartbreak. Yet, challenges remain. The HTS, the rebel alliance, leading the charge, is still labeled a terrorist group by the United Nations, and the road to international recognition and rebuilding trust is going to be a steep one. So, what lies ahead for Syria, and how will this seismic shift ripple across an already fragile West Asia? We're tracking the story and its global impact as well. Joining me here on the broadcast is Ambassador Ashok Sajjanar, former Indian diplomat. A very warm welcome to you, Ambassador. Ambassador, before I come to you for the first question, here's a complete report in terms of what has happened in the last 24 hours for the betterment of all the viewers that are joining us.
Gunshots rang out in celebration across Syria's capital on Sunday as rebel forces declared they had seized control of Damascus and thrown out President Bashar al-Assad. That spells an end to the Assad family's iron-fisted rule and comes after more than 13 years of civil war in a seismic moment for the Middle East. After mounting a sudden advance a week ago, the rebels on Sunday announced on state TV that they had toppled the president, calling him a tyrant. The Syrian rebel coalition said in a statement it was working to complete the transfer of power to a transitional governing body with full executive powers. It added that, quote, "The Great Syrian Revolution has moved from the stage of struggle to overthrow the Assad regime to the struggle to build a Syria together that befits the sacrifices of its people." Assad, who had crushed all forms of dissent, flew out of Damascus for an unknown destination early on Sunday, according to army sources. Russia's foreign ministry later said in a statement Assad had left the country after giving orders for a peaceful handover of power. As people celebrated the government's collapse in cities such as Aleppo, Syrian Prime Minister Mohammad Ghazi al-Jalali said he had been in contact with rebel commander Abu Muhammad al-Golani to discuss managing the transitional period. That marks a notable development in efforts to shape Syria's political future. The Prime Minister also called for free elections so Syrians can choose the leaders they want. But that would require a smooth transition in a country with complex competing interests, from Islamists to groups linked to the United States, Russia, and Turkey. Assad's ouster is a major blow to the influence of Russia and Iran in the region. They were key allies who propped him up in the long-running conflict's critical moments. The pace of events has stunned Arab capitals and raised fears of a new wave of regional instability. It marks a turning point for Syria, shattered by years of war that has killed hundreds of thousands of people. It has also forced millions abroad as refugees, many of them seen cheering on Sunday on the streets of their adopted homes from Lebanon to Germany. Western governments have long shunned the Assad-led state, But now they have to decide how to deal with a new administration that looks set to be influenced by a group globally labelled as terrorists. Led by the commander Golani, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, is Syria's strongest rebel group. It used to be an al-Qaeda affiliate, and some Syrians are worried that it will impose draconian Islamist rule.
Well, Ambassador Ashok Sajjanar, former Indian diplomat, continues to be with us. Many thanks for patiently waiting with us, Ambassador. Ambassador, first and foremost, I'm not going to begin by asking you this question about who is actually going to govern Syria, but I want to ask how is this severed Syria now going to be governed? Because I remember speaking to you when North Korean troops had moved into Russia. We were talking about how before Donald Trump, everybody's putting in that last gasp effort of making sure they have enough in their grasp as well. And the second time I spoke to you was, when the Hezbollah-Lebanon ceasefire, ended up happening. People are actually making those last-ditch efforts before Donald Trump actually takes the Oval Office. But to my question again, not who, but how will Syria be governed now?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kabir. First of all, I compliment you on your excellent memory because you seem to remember everything that we have discussed in the past. But, the question that you ask is as difficult as, who's going to do it, how are they going to do it? I think that's $1 million question because it is a very fractured country. It's a very fractured society. It's a very multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-religious country. You have Shias, you have Sunnis, you have Druze, you have Alawites, you have so many people. So there are so many differences in that particular country. In addition to that, you have interests of such a large number of countries, such a large number of players, not necessarily only regional players, but global players. You have Turkey, of course, in the north, you have Israel in the south, you have Russia also, which has huge interest in, Latakia and in Tartus, the naval and the air bases that it has. Iran has a huge interest and has a huge presence there also in terms of going through seeking access, connectivity access to the Hezbollah in Lebanon and to Hamas. And of course, the Kurds are there, the Americans are there, the extra regional actors, players. So, it is going to be extremely difficult for this HTS, which has come, from, the north and occupied, first it occupied Aleppo and then it occupied Homs and Hama and then has come to Damascus. But, to get the whole country under one authority, under one rule, it is going to be extremely difficult. And we've seen that Turkey has started moving in from the north. Israel has started moving in from the south. They are creating their own buffer zones. They are creating, occupying territory so that their own security is guaranteed. That is not affected in any adverse manner, in any significant adverse manner. So I think it's going to be extremely difficult. The next few days or weeks, if not more, are going to be very important to see how the dice play out on the game board. Kabir.
Ambassador, you've really hit the nail on the head when you've made those pertinent points. But people are also looking at this in terms of a US versus Russia fight as well. And when you're looking at it from that particular prism, it seems like Russia has clearly lost this particular battle.
Yeah, you're right. I would say that, Russia has lost the battle because, Russia was the one which came in 2015, if you remember, when Al-Qaeda had launched its attack on Syria, on Bashar al-Assad, and it was making, some very impressive victories in 2014. And you would recall that it was around that time, next year in 2015, when Putin had gone to the UN General Assembly and he had announced very grandiosely that Russia is going to enter into the Syrian conflict, and it was not known as to in what manner they would be able to do it, but I think they came in with full air power and they were able to stabilize the country from 2015 till 2019. It took them about 4 years or so, and I think after 2020 we've had some sort of minimal respite. Of course, after 2020, we've seen the COVID pandemic also which really, brought all this fighting and other conflict onto the back burner. But we've seen after 22, Russia has got involved in Ukraine, and it has lost men, it has lost soldiers, it has lost equipment, it has lost armors. So, it has, although it's said that it is going to, there were reports that it's going to come in a big way. It did launch some few air sorties also, but obviously they have been very ineffective. So I think both the powers that were standing behind Bashar al-Assad, that is Russia and Iran, and even Iran, there were reports that 30,000 fighters are going to come from Lebanon and to the assistance of Bashar al-Assad, but nothing materialized. And I think in addition to Russia, it is Iran which is the biggest loser. Russia is still maintaining its control over Latakia and Tartus. They are behind some hills, so it is difficult for even the rebels to go and occupy them, and maybe they don't want to take on the Russians directly. But Russians are still maintaining their bases on the Mediterranean. But I think as far as Iran is concerned, that has lost big time, because Hezbollah has been decimated by Israel. Hamas has been completely vanquished. And Iran also, it has threatened that it's going to launch attacks against Israel, but it has really not been able to do anything. It's not in a position to take on Israel directly, frontally.